My name is Rafael, you're watching Rock Garage, and today I'm gonna show you 5 famous musicians that are big fans of Motörhead and Lemmy Kilmister. But first, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. Well, Motörhead is one of the most underrated bands of all time. Lemmy, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated lyricists of all time. And they were simply extremely influential, but they didn't have the same commercial success as their peers, many of their peers. And the first band which actually is a band, it's Metallica. Metallica is all the members of Metallica, James Hetfield, Lars Ulrich, Kirk Hammett, and Rob Trujillo nowadays are also always, all of them are big fans of Motörhead. And the previous bassist as well, Cliff Burton and then Jason Newsted, they also loved Motörhead. And the interesting thing is that if you don't know the story, Lars Ulrich, before he created Metallica, he was so crazy about Motörhead, he was part of their fan club, and he used to drive around their tour bus across the United States and go to every show. And he had the chance to meet Lemmy before he became famous, before he formed Metallica with James Hetfield. So it's really, really interesting. And in an interview with Dave Lynn back in 2010, Lemmy recalled this first meeting with Lars Ulrich. This is what he said. "There's always been something very special ever since Lars and Cliff Burton came to my hotel room before Metallica even existed. Lars introduced himself to me in his ever modest way with the words, 'I'm the head of your West Coast fan club.' We later found out there was only him and Cliff in it. He tried to keep up with me in the drinking stakes, which was very bad news. We used a photograph of him from that night, covered in vomit on an album sleeve. It might have been No Sleep at All. He's the one captioned it. Recognize anybody? But Metallica are a great fucking band, man. They're truly one of the best bands ever. Some Kind of Monster aside, every band has problems. But you know who I hated most in that movie? The fucking cyclist." And, you know, a few decades later, Metallica covered Enter Sandman, and they, with that song, with the cover, which is outrageous in my opinion because of all the incredible things they did, the only Grammy Award they won was because of the Enter Sandman cover. You know, it's just a horrible thing. I mean, the Grammys never really recognize heavy metal or hard rock, and a lot of terrible things happened during those years of the event. And let's go to the next one. And obviously, Metallica covered a lot of Motörhead songs. They played with Lemmy live. They dressed up as Lemmy on occasion, if I'm not mistaken, his birthday party. And let's go to the second one, who is Brian May, the Queen guitarist. That's right, he loves Motörhead too, and he played with the band. And he posted a really touching tribute to Lemmy Kilmister after his death in 2015 at the age of 70. And this is what Brian May said. "Words don't come easy, especially when you know Lemmy would have laughed at us trying to say dignified things about him being a hero. Anytime I attempted to say anything complimentary to Lemmy to his face, he would fix me with a kind of amused, contemptuous stare. But a kind of hero he certainly was, unique in just about every way imaginable. He was a living mismatch of personality types. His music was roaring, abrasive, uncompromising. His lyrics most deliberately gave no hint of sensitivity. Yes, yet, as a person, he was a pacifist, a deep thinker, a man who cared profoundly about his friends. I was never in his closest circle of pals, but we bumped into each other often, and he always managed to say something shockingly respectful to me, leaving me disarmed because he hated being praised himself, or so it seemed. One of my dearest friends lived with Lemmy for 10 years. She always spoke of him as a tender man, very different from his public face, which was never deviated from his tough gaze on the world. Lemmy was a highly cultured and well-read man, yet to see him glued to a fruit machine most of a night in the Rainbow Bar and Grill on Sunset Strip, you would never have guessed it. In fact, that hallowed place, steeped in rock and roll history, will always bear his spiritual mark. We all come into this world as babies and mold ourselves into what we want to be. Lemmy, as a product of his own, will always has to be the original mold of hard rock icon, which defines the term. Lemmy lived his music and his persona within a music 100% to the full. Motörhead has been for most of its history a three-piece outfit, again leaving no room for frills, and the three pieces, or sometimes four, were always frenetically at max. I remember guesting with them at the Brixton Academy. It was possibly the most ear-splitting experience of my life. I mean, what a statement that Brian gave, and it's really interesting to see this other side of Lemmy, and also that Brian May, who has a more commercial approach in his music with Queen, he loves Motörhead as well, and as he said, he played with the track Overkill, the classic Motörhead track Overkill, at the Brixton Academy in 2000. And there's a video about that you can see in the description. Now let's go. The next one is Joey Ramone. That's right, Joey Ramone was also a huge Motörhead fan. And the interesting thing is that Lemmy was a huge Ramones fan. Ramones were his favorite punk rock of all time and one of his favorite bands. And he even wrote a song as a tribute to them, which is called Ramones, that was released in the early 90s. And even the Ramones incorporated that song to their set lists, and they played a lot that song in the 90s. And in an interview in 1989 on the edition of MTV's 120 Minutes, Joey Ramone, the vocalist of the Ramones, chose some of his favorite records at the time, and he listed, for example, No Remorse, which was released by Motörhead in 1984, and he said, "I love all their stuff, but No Remorse, I thought it was a great collection of things. There is no band like Motörhead. They're great, unique, and exciting. Lemmy is like a total character." As I said, the Ramones song, which was the tribute to the Ramones, was released in 1991 on the Motörhead album 1916. And the cool thing is that Lemmy Joey Ramone said once that Lemmy first showed him the Ramones song, the tribute song to him, at a hotel room. And he sat there listening to it, and he cried. And he said that he felt like someone like John Lennon had written a song about him, to see how important Motörhead was for him and how Ramones was important to Lemmy too. That's really interesting. And let's go to the next one, the final one, who is Slash. The Guns N' Roses guitarist is a huge fan of Motörhead and was a good friend of Lemmy. He even was one of the people who gave a speech at Lemmy's funeral in 2016, the beginning of 2016. And in an interview with Revolver magazine in 2021 that we transcribed, he said which were some of his favorite Motörhead songs. He said, "There's so many Motörhead songs. I'll just go like We Are the Road Crew. It was one of my favorite songs for the longest time. I actually named my band Road Crew after that time at the time. Killed by Death is probably one of my favorite Motörhead anthems. But if we sat here for a second, we could go through Motörhead songs for hours." And it's really interesting to see that Lemmy was a huge influence, and there's a lot of other bands that were highly influenced by Motörhead and all the work that Lemmy did during his career. And sadly, he left us at the age of 70 back in 2015. If you think about People like Paul McCartney, who is touring at the age of 84. You know, he's gonna turn 84 in 2025, and Ringo Starr will turn 85, and they're still touring. But obviously, they had different lifestyles from Lemmy. But you know, we could have. Sadly, that he left us too soon. Maybe we could have at least one more decade with him and more music about this fantastic musician that Lemmy was. And that's it. If you want to read more, go to description, visit the article I wrote about it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video. That's it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.